It was the night before the church fete. Thomas and Percy were carrying post trains across the island. When they met at Dryall Station, Percy found that Thomas wasn't in the best of moods. "Something wrong, Thomas?" asked Percy. "I'm just dreading my next job," said Thomas. "You mean your daily branch line passenger train?" Percy asked. "Of course not, I love that job," replied Thomas. "But before I do that, I have to cover for James. He was scheduled to arrange some early morning coal trains, but his regulator jammed shut. I'll be too tired to take Annie and Clarabelle after doing his work." And he was right. He was losing energy as he shunted empty wagons to the coal chutes. By the time he was done, he was tired and dirty. "All right, Thomas, you've done a good job," said the driver. "I think we have time for a washdown for our next train. That'll give you a chance for a rest." At that moment, the Fat Controller arrived at Tidmouth Sheds to tell his engines about a few changes in the timetable. "I need Toby to deliver a tanker of toffee to the vicarage orchard," he said. "The vicar decided to make use of some of his apples and treat his guests to toffee apples at the fete. And Emily, I'd like you to fill in for Thomas on his branch line. I expect Thomas will want to rest after his long night at the coal yard." The Fat Controller was right. Thomas was not looking forward to more work as he was being cleaned. "Well, at least I have time to rest while I'm being washed down," he yawned to no one in particular. His driver commented, "You won't be here long. Not like when you had that accident with the chute. Now if you had that much coal dust on you, you'd probably get the rest you need." Percy had been asked to tell Thomas and his crew that they could take the day off. But as he approached the washdown, Thomas started being cheeky. "Can you imagine if I was covered in treacle?" "Oh, now that would grant you an entire day off," chuckled his fireman. "I hear the vicar's fete is going to be a costume party this year," Thomas went on. "If Percy got an invite, I think we know what he'd go as." "Oh, hello, Percy." Percy was cross. "You just can't let me forget about that, can you?" Just then, Thomas's driver looked at his watch. "Goodness gracious, we're going to be late. There's no time to rinse the suds off of Thomas. We have to collect Annie and Clarabelle now." Percy said nothing and let Thomas puff away covered in suds. "Late? They're not late," said Percy's fireman. "They've got another 20 minutes. In fact, they've got a whole day." "I tried to tell them," Percy lied. "We should go after them," the fireman said to the driver. He then realised that the driver was sniggering. "What's so funny?" "Every time I remember when we had to clean the hay and treacle off of Percy, I can never control myself."
"Lawrence, help me, I'm stuck."
Percy's fireman groaned as the driver continued to giggle. Thomas was hurrying to collect his coaches. As he rushed along, there was trouble. The soap suds began to fill the cab. Before the crew realised it, they couldn't see where they were going. "Apply the brake!" shouted the fireman. "I can't find the brake," replied the driver. "Thomas, I need you to be my eyes." But Thomas was having vision problems as well. The soap had gotten into his eyes.
"This hurts,"
he exclaimed. After frantically searching the footplate, Thomas's driver found the brake. But as he applied it, Toby had stopped at a signal with his toffee tanker. Thomas had bumped him right off the rails. "Sorry, Toby," called Thomas, opening his stinging eyes. The Fat Controller happened to be driving by when he saw what had happened. He stopped his car and got out. "What in the name of curried cabbage is going on?" he asked. "What are you doing here, Thomas? Didn't Percy tell you that Emily was taking over your passenger train today?" "No, sir, he didn't," replied Thomas. "I think he was going to, but we left in a bit of a rush," said Thomas's driver sheepishly. "Seems my watch broke, so I thought we were late." "I see," said the Fat Controller. "What about you, Toby? Are you damaged?" "It was quite a nasty bump, sir," said Toby's driver. "His pipes have been knocked loose." "Botheration," groaned the Fat Controller. "First James, now Toby. Right, change of timetable. Toby will have to wait in the sidings, and Thomas will take the toffee tanker to the orchard. Then he will take Toby to the works." "But didn't you say I could take the day off?" asked Thomas. "I'm sorry, Thomas," said the Fat Controller, "but this accident has complicated matters. Now get rinsed off and be on your way. You may have a rest after you take Toby away." Thomas was upset and still a little sore, but he didn't argue. With the tanker coupled to his front, Thomas puffed towards the orchard. When he was halfway there, a porter at the Sodor airport flagged him down. "Oh, what's going on now?" asked the driver. Thomas stopped and the porter spoke to the crew. "Thank goodness I've caught your attention in time. The signalman at the next signal box just telephoned. Edward's broken one of his side rods up the line." Thomas's fireman chuckled. "Really? This is serious, Reggie," said the driver sharply. "This means our timetable will have to be changed again. Edward's going to back down so that you can be diverted onto another line that will take you through the forest," explained the porter. "Proceed with caution." Thomas's driver moved a very sluggish Thomas forward. Up the line they could see the way was clear and sped up a little bit as they passed over the points. But the signalman hadn't set the points leading into a siding to take them to the forest yet. The tanker hit the buffer so hard that the lid snapped off and toffee splashed out all over Thomas. "Yuck," muttered Thomas. "This is just not our day, is it?" groaned the driver. "All right, Reggie. Go change those points and I'll reverse Thomas out of the siding." After a few minutes, Thomas was puffing along the track through the forest. "I must be on time," said Thomas. "The vicar is waiting for this toffee." Thomas didn't notice that many of the line-side tree branches were right in his path. He was too distracted and upset about how his day was going. At last, Thomas arrived at the vicarage orchard. "Phew," he sighed. "I made it." "Well, well, well," chuckled Trevor. "What a way to make an entrance at a costume party." "What are you on about? I'm right on time," said Thomas in confusion. "Yes, indeed," smiled the vicar. "Thank you, Thomas. Now I think you should go and get cleaned up." Thomas suddenly realized he was covered from smokebox to bunker in leaves and branches. "Cedars and aspens, cinders and ashes," he exclaimed. Thomas was rather upset in the shed that evening. The crew had managed to clean him in good time, but he felt embarrassed and exhausted. "I had to take both Toby and Edward to the works, and neither of them could stop laughing at me." Percy couldn't help but feel sorry for Thomas. "Well, at least you made it to the fete on time," he said. "I heard the Fat Controller say he was pleased with your work today." "Really?" asked Thomas, cheering up a bit. "Yes, he said you did very well to keep up with the hectic timetables." Thomas smiled. "You think I'll get to take tomorrow off as a reward?" he asked. "Not with 3 engines at the works," smirked Percy. "You'll have to work 3 times as hard tomorrow. The Fat Controller has you scheduled to do all of their jobs instead of taking Annie and Clarabelle." "What?" Thomas spluttered. Percy couldn't keep a straight face. "Just joking," he giggled. "But you do have to work tomorrow." "Oh well," Thomas sighed. "I'll always be on time, and no amount of toffee will ever stand in my way."